this episode is the first of what I'm going to be calling extra time episodes. Extra time are going to be short, sharp, 10, 15 minutes max episodes in which I delve into a critical idea, concept, piece of research, or technique. In this episode, I want to take a short, sharp look at mindset. Now, mindset is essentially the framing we put around every interaction, every decision, every environment that we walk into. The way in which we perceive that event, that environment, that interaction, that relationship is determined by what mindset we carry. And there are many different ways of thinking about mindset. But in this episode, I just want to touch on the concept, which I'm sure you've heard of, which is growth mindset. Now, the concept of growth mindset was coined by Professor Carol Dweck from Stanford University, probably about 20 years ago now, when she was looking into the importance of mindset in school, particularly in younger students in school, around that sort of year 5, year 6 mark. And she was exploring the difference between those people or those students who felt that intelligence is kind of set, like you're either born smart or you're not, or those that believed that you can develop intelligence over time and with work. And broadly speaking, what her studies found was that those students that had a growth mindset, i.e. they understood, of course, perhaps people have a certain start point when it comes to intelligence, but that's all it is. It's a start point, and with work, with effort, with support around us, we can improve. And those with what Carol Dweck would term as a fixed mindset, those who believe intelligence was you've either got it or you haven't, and so if you've got it, things kind of come naturally. She found that whilst those people might still succeed, typically they plateau quite early, or perhaps they don't necessarily reach the potential that they might. Now, in recent years, the concept of growth mindset has gone into all different kinds of fields, not just year 5s and 6 kids at school, but every domain you can think of: the business world, the sporting world, of course, even relationships. Understanding that no matter where we find ourselves, essentially the way I think about a growth mindset is this: that every day gives us the opportunity to learn, grow, and develop. And it's easy to say that. It's easy to say that, but it's actually quite challenging to believe that and do that on a daily basis. And I'm not actually suggesting that perhaps even I, who preach this, I preach this stuff. I'm not saying that even I sort of have every day where I'm going, oh yeah, I've learned something. I've grown here, I've developed. But rather the mindset is no. I'm not saying I will learn, grow, and develop every day, but I can recognize that every day presents me that opportunity. And so what I'm want to share with you today, I guess, is as an athlete or as a coach or perhaps as a parent of an emerging athlete, is to maybe think about the impact of mindset, and also some of the behaviors which we can kind of just start doing. We can actually start to cultivate a growth mindset by doing stuff rather than just waiting to believe we can do stuff. Now, the first thing I think that's really important to think about, and we'll keep it just located in sport, is, when you think about your sporting ability, do you see that more as a nature thing? So you were just born quick, strong, you're tall, which makes you more, suited to certain sports. You've got power, hand-eye coordination, reaction time, all that kind of stuff. Do you see that as, something that is just inherent, it's just who you are? Or do you see it as something that you've had to really work hard at and really, train and be really deliberate about developing? Chances are that if we thought about that as a continuum, you'd find yourself sort of moving yourself up and down that continuum based on different aspects of your sport. The challenge that we have, or the challenge I'd like to put out to you actually, is to be mindful of where do you put yourself on that continuum when you're faced with setbacks or when you're faced with a bit of adversity, or when you're faced with a challenge from a coach, for example, playing you out of position. I can't tell you how many athletes I've worked with, not only emerging athletes, but elite athletes as well, who will say things like, I'm playing out of position, so I can't, I can't bring my best. Or, I'm only a right-sided player, and the coach wants me to play on the left, or whatever it might be. And that is the perfect opportunity to learn, grow, and develop if we're willing to take it, or if we're even willing to see it. The problem we have is often, these opportunities are kind of wrapped up in setbacks. They're wrapped up in adversity. They're wrapped up in things that we'd rather, if we're being honest with ourselves, not have to contend with. But I guess something that is almost universally true is that that's where the gold is. That's where your edge is. That's where your next sort of level is if you can go to that place that you don't want to go to, whether that's literally, going to a video review where you're going to be on show, for want of a better word, or go to that feedback session with the coach. So it could be quite a literal place you don't want to go, or it could be a mental space you don't want to go to, like really grappling with your own resilience or your own mental toughness in that space. That's where the gold is. And so having a growth mindset, which gives you the opportunity to reframe these setbacks, reframe these adversities, reframe these things that you'd rather not do as opportunities, that's really, really powerful. And I would put it to you that any athlete who is regarded as someone, who's right at the top echelon of the game, has that belief. They believe that no matter how much they've played, how much recognition they've got, whatever their contract's worth, they see there's another edge. There's a next level to get to. And for many of us, it's quite a challenge to think in that way. And what makes it difficult for us to think in a growth mindset way is the environments in which we find ourselves in, the conversations we find ourselves having, the kind of praise that we've perhaps have been receiving since we were young athletes around, why are people proud of us? And one of the interesting findings from Carol Dweck's original research into growth mindset was this: the praise that a young person receives is critical in determining whether or not they'll develop a fixed or a growth mindset. And what she found was that young people who were praised for being intelligent, for being smarter than the rest, for the scores that they got at school. So the kids who received praise around outcomes and ability, they tended to develop this fixed mindset, which is, this idea that, okay, well, you've either got it or you haven't. I've got it. People are proud of me because I've got it, so I need to protect it. And one of the best ways or easiest ways to protect what you have is don't take any risks. What I mean by that is some people would much rather be the best player on the worst team than try and, graduate into a better team and risk being the worst player. Because if I'm the worst player on this team, what will people think of me? Those young people that received praise for the effort that they put in, yes, we'll recognize the outcome, of course, but what we're really praising, what I'm really proud of, is the effort that you've put in there, the work that it's taken for you to achieve these outcomes. What the research showed was that those individuals were more likely to adopt the growth mindset. And so when they recognize that people are proud of them or see real value in striving, see real value in pushing yourself, going out of your comfort zone to see what you're truly capable of, then it's those individuals that tend to grow up more with this growth mindset, and they'll take on challenges. They would actually rather be the worst player on a better team because they appreciate that being around better players, perhaps getting access to better coaches, better resourcing, they'll learn, grow, and develop. So there's a few interesting points there, I think, for parents and for coaches, particularly of younger athletes. What are the messages that we're sending around what we value in our teams, what we value in our performances? Now, if you're an athlete, what I'd like to ponder is this: are you only good if your sport's going good? That is, if you're playing well, then you're happy to talk about it. You're up and about. Your mood's good. You're sociable. But if we're not, if the coach is off us a little bit, or if we're being played out of position and we're not particularly playing as well as we feel we could, or maybe we're on a run of losses and whatnot, do you tend to sort of withdraw? And what I'd like you to consider is, what are the stories that we tell ourselves? What are the stories we tell ourselves when we're faced with that adversity? How much blame, is in those stories? We're blaming other people, whether you're blaming the coach or blaming the ref. How many excuses are we making when we tell those stories? I was a bit under the weather, I've got a bit of a niggle, this wasn't right, that was a bad call. Or do you find yourself completely retreating from it and just denying that it's even an issue, like just not focusing, not thinking about it, trying to push it away? Maybe even telling people, I'm not really fussed anyway, I don't really care about it. Now, if we find ourselves doing that, I think the first thing to recognize is that that's probably quite normal. There's nothing wrong. It's not like it's a major drama. But the first skill, if you like, or in terms of mental skills, is to be able to just acknowledge what we're doing. And if we acknowledge what we're doing, then we can choose to do it less or stop completely. And from there, if we choose to do it less or stop completely, then we can replace it with more helpful thinking patterns or more growth mindset orientated thinking patterns. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is seeing setbacks or adversity as challenges, seeing them as opportunities to learn, grow, or develop. So yeah, you might be being played out of position. No problem. Rip in. Give it 100%. Learn as much as you can about that position, because that's going to help you learn, grow, and develop as an athlete, as a player. You'll become more versatile. You'll have a better understanding of what different roles on the field require, which means you'll become a better teammate. The second thing I'd like you to consider is how you think about mistakes. Sometimes we think about mistakes as things that need to be avoided, particularly in games, and I get that. But in training, if we're making mistakes, then I would ask you to consider how you might think about that as proof you're learning. If you're making mistakes, it is proof that you are pushing yourself beyond your current abilities. And that's a good thing to be doing at training. Now, if you're only making mistakes, then perhaps you've gone too far out of your sort of, comfort zone, so to speak. Perhaps you're in the stress zone as opposed to the stretch zone. And maybe that's a conversation that needs to be had with coaches or whatnot. But I want us to embrace the idea of not being great at training so we can be great on game day. Third thing I'd like you to consider is go looking for feedback rather than praise. Go looking for people who have, earned the right to actually have an opinion on how you've performed, but look for feedback as to what you might do differently. What's the next iteration of this performance, rather than just looking for good game, well played, you were the best. Because whilst praise might feel nice, it's not that useful. Yeah, of course, in terms of building a bit of confidence, it's useful. But long term, it's kind of more like a sugary diet. What we need is a high protein diet, right? And that's where the feedback is. Feedback is like protein for our skills. It's the building blocks for our skill set. So again, yes, we like praise, just like people like sugary sweets, right? We just don't need it all the time. And if we can learn to enjoy the protein and the veggies, learn to enjoy getting the feedback. Recognize that if this person's giving you constructive feedback, it's because they've taken the time to actually think about you and think about your game and give you some pointers to improve. And the fourth and final idea for you is to try to start to see other people's success as inspirational rather than as a threat to you. So, sometimes we'll see people getting selected ahead of us. We'll see people, going for trials, and we know that they're going for my spot, so they may well, beat me out of the team. And what I'd like you to do is consider, rather than thinking like, oh, they got selected, why not me? Just turn the intonation around and go, okay, they got selected, so why not me? And what I mean by that is, why not me? Means well, it could be me, but clearly there's just something, and just to be clear, we're avoiding the blame and excuses stuff where we're thinking, well, it's, the coach has got their favourites and all that. We're ignoring all that, because that's, no matter how true you think it is, that's irrelevant. It's not useful to think like that. So what's more useful is to go, okay, why not me? And when we look at what other people are doing that we perceive as being successful, or what other people are doing in our spot, then we can learn about ourselves by learning about them. So we can actually start to see the habits that they have, see the way they play the game, the way they prepare for the game. And we can start to see, well, where are the gaps in what I'm doing? And when we start seeing the gaps, again, rather than seeing that as a threat or proof we can't learn, we need to see that as the opportunity to learn, grow, and develop. So that's it for Extra Time this time around. For more on the mental skills side of things, please head over to playfearless.com. Make sure that you unlock your free membership. You'll get some online coaching there with me, as well as members-only content from our guest podcasts. So far, we've had the likes of Mick Fanning, Anna Mears, Mike Hussey, Joel Selwood, Bree Walker on the podcast, and we've got a stack of great guests in the pipeline for upcoming episodes too. So playfearless.com, you can unlock your free membership there. And of course, as we always say, make sure that you subscribe to the pod, rate it 5 stars if you can, and share it as far and as wide as you can to anyone who you think takes their sport seriously. But until our next episode, thanks so much for being here. Let's go.